We are pleased to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Klaus Moosmayer. He is the Chief Ethics, Risk and Compliance Officer at the Swiss pharmaceutical company Novartis. Prior to that, he was head of compliance at Siemens for many years. He is an internationally renowned expert in the field of compliance and is also vice chairman of the OECD Executive Board. He stresses that we need a holistic and organizational approach towards ethics, risk management and compliance in order to strengthen integrity and assurance in corporations.
Kann ich anfangen, ja? Yeah, hello, good morning to everyone. A big pleasure to be with you for this fantastic conference which has been organized. I just want to take you today on a journey for an ethics, risk and compliance assurance function, our company at Novartis. And after the presentation, I would be very glad to get some feedback to the polls and to engage in a great dialogue with you. So if you talk about ethics, risk and compliance at Novartis, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about our company, because only if you understand the context where we are, who we are, I believe we can talk about the ethics, risk and compliance setup. So we are one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. You see here our financial figures, but maybe more importantly, let's talk about our footprint. I mean, every one of you, I believe every morning, every evening asks herself, himself a question. What is my purpose, why I'm working, where I'm working? And for me, when I joined after 18 years at this fantastic company, Siemens, Novartis, one of the figures which really appealed me a lot was the nearly 800 million patients we are reaching every year with our medicines. And you know, I think all of you understand now in the middle of the pandemic of COVID-19, this has a very, very deep and purposeful meaning for us. Because one thing what I always say on conferences is, let's not make the mistake to separate the industry, companies, business from society. We are part of society. We are in 155 countries all over the world with our more than 108,000 associates. We use 16 million patients by managed access programs to get them affordable medicine where they are living. I already mentioned we employ more than 108,000 associates around the globe. And people are our strength. I mean, it may sound weird talk to you as a Chief Ethics, Risk and Compliance Officer, but I believe more than processes and policies, people make the difference. And I will talk about this later on regarding our code of ethics and the behavioral science approach we have taken. So more than 108,000 people around the globe, coming from roughly 150 countries. And now, in these years, especially of importance, diversity and inclusion. We are very proud that we are just ranked by an important agency as the #1 in the pharmaceutical industry when it comes to diversity and inclusion. And just to give you two figures which are important here, we are nearly having now 50% of our management, female management in place. So that's gender diversity, of course, is an important topic. But of course, all kind of diversity is crucial because we believe you will get higher performance if you work in an inclusive and diverse team. And you know, when we did on our cultural journey, which I will talk about in a second, when we did the first big survey and asked all our associates, what is the most important topic for you in your personal careers? It was my personal growth and my learning was the answer. And therefore, we set an ambitious goal. We said we want all associates having 100 hours of learning during a year. You see the figures here, we're not quite there yet, but and I will talk about this also later. After our ethics week we had a couple of weeks ago in September, we are getting there because we offered a lot of learning also for ethics and compliance. So this company Novartis is on a journey, and we call it reimagining medicine. And we all know from behavioral science, there is no organizational change. There's only individual change, which leads then to an organizational change in big organizations, being them private or public. And if we talk here about the importance of strategy in the company, and this is also important later on if I talk about ethics, risk, and compliance, to bring the strategy of the function together with the strategy of the company. We have five pillars in our strategy. Unleash the power of the people. And you may have heard our CEO, Vas Narasimhan, talking about this. We have this approach of an unbossed leadership team. We want to get the people clarity what they do, but then also give them the accountability in the company in an unbossed environment. We deliver transformative medicine to the world. Innovation is very important for us, and there are also risks and opportunities. We are pioneers in cell and gene therapy, and we know as a pioneer you also get the criticism and the hit. There are important ethical questions also in this regard regarding affordability of modern innovative medicine and about access to patients. Embrace operational excellence, important for all companies, of course. And then this is now under COVID-19 for you maybe a no-brainer, go big in data and digital, but we were lucky that we started this journey already before the pandemic, because in the pandemic, everybody needed to go digital. And the companies who are well prepared for going digital definitely had an advantage. So we had luckily our clinical trials already on a digital platform, which was of great use and importance for our patients during the pandemic. And then building trust with society. This, of course, is very much linked with our strategy in ethics, risk, and compliance. We know that the pharmaceutical company before the pandemic were an all-time low on reputation. But as I said before, the solutions for society, for mankind and health can be only achieved together between the public sector, civil society, and the private sector, especially when it comes to health. And therefore, building trust with society, regain the trust in the pharmaceutical industry, which had its failures and missteps in the past, is of crucial importance. Now, coming to our strategy in ethics, risk, and compliance. Why are we embarking on this journey of a combined ethics, risk, and compliance function? Because there's one basic belief we have. Being compliant is not longer good enough. And we know this sounds easy to say, it's difficult in practice. We are in a regulated industry. We have to comply with hundreds, sometimes thousands of regulations around the globe. So already the pure compliance for us is a big challenge. But you build reputation not only with pure compliance, legal compliance. There's a higher expectation, especially towards the pharmaceutical industry. And therefore we said we need to bring, and that's the main message of the presentation, we need to bring for a modern assurance function, which is not only focused on legal compliance, three pillars together. The ethics, engaging, doing what's right, knowing that we can be only a facilitator. The ethics has to be lived by all the associates every day. The enterprise risk management, and watch out, it's not only the anti-corruption risk management, that's the full responsibility for enterprise risk management across all risk functions in the company and the compliance in the organization. So if we now talk about our program, we have divided this into four buckets, more or less. It's embedding ethics and human rights into our operation, a very challenging and difficult task. And by the way, I don't want to give you a marketing session. It's not perfect what we are doing. We have our failures and have to stand up again and retry, but we believe in what we are doing. So embedding ethics and human rights. And by the way, human rights, and I will talk about this at the end, that's one of the big duties and also opportunities to make a difference for companies. You know, an anti-corruption society expects from us that we are compliant. as difficult as it may be. But the human rights aspiration is one of the big focus topics going forward. As I said, enterprise risk management, and then, and you all know this as compliance professionals, third-party risk management. We are living also from the reputation of our third parties. They're not our company, but their conduct will be reflected on our reputation. It's always easy to show us nice slides what companies are doing. The question is there really also a true organization, budget, headcount behind this? Here, just a glance how we are organized. We have roughly 570 full-time equivalent associates working for ethics, risk, and compliance. And we are following the business. That means we have a corporate structure which exercises the governance and the strategy for the company on ethics, risk, and compliance. We have ethics, risk, and compliance officers and professionals in all the functions, in all the business units. And most of the colleagues are working where the real frontline is in the countries. There is, of course, our biggest workforce in ethics, risk, and compliance. And as I said, all the other risk functions in the company, if this is finance, data privacy, information security, health, safety, environment, quality, are also reporting into our function. And by the way, if you talk about the profile of a modern ethics, risk, and compliance professional, being myself a lawyer, being a lawyer is not enough these days. So we are trying to get also in ethics, risk, and compliance a diverse workforce. We have people from the business, from other functions. We are hiring internally, externally. And by the way, it's a good measurement about the visibility and reputation of your own function in the company if you get interest in open jobs. And I'm very glad to say that we have senior business leaders just in the last couple of months also joining management positions in ethics, risk, and compliance. If you talk about ethics, so what we try to do is the following. We said, let's start a new journey on ethics. Let's develop a new code of ethics for the company. We just recovered in July from all the resolutions of our past compliance cases, which are going back many years, but of course needed to be resolved before starting a new journey. We worked 1 year hard to get a new code of ethics ready. And we had two basic principles. The one principle was co-creation crowdsourcing. We wanted to involve as many associates as possible for the code of ethics. It was a crowdsourced approach, co-created by associates for associates. And we based our code of ethics and the ethics ecosystem, which is built around the code of ethics, on behavioral science. And we have several basic principles, and they are then the foundation for the ethical commitments we have. And these basic principles you see here: be open-minded, be honest, be bold, be accountable. They're reflected in our ethical decision-making framework, where we offer an interactive platform to all associates to check their own biases, to check out dilemma situations, to use dilemma case studies, real-life case studies in their day-to-day business, use an ethical conversation toolkit. And after the start of the Code of Ethics, early September, already several 10,000 of associates have used our interactive ethics platform to get guidance on their decision. We can't do the decision for them, but we can help them to come to the right decision. And why is this important? Because if you see ethical dilemmas in the company, it's like an iceberg, you know. You can attack the visible part of the iceberg by a classical code of conduct and rules and policies. This is what you see, what you can address. But what we learned from behavioral science is the much bigger part of our dilemmas, of our biases, unconscious biases, are below the surface and are often not transparent. You need psychological safety to speak up. In all what we have done in the Code of Ethics and the decision-making framework on our interactive platform is to address especially the part below the surface on the ethical iceberg. And we We did a huge campaign in the company a couple of days ago. We engaged all countries, all functions in the launch of the Code of Ethics. Just to give you a number, in the first town hall to kick this off, we had more than 12,000 associates participating in the launch of the Code of Ethics. In all countries where we are present, we had local activities, ethical challenges, town halls, and commitments. Again, that's the start of the journey. And of course, all the other policies need to be based on the same systematic of the Code of Ethics. So what we are trying to do to go from a rules-based policy framework to a principle-based policy framework. And that's a challenge, I can tell you, in a highly regulated industry. And we have to find the right balance that we give the colleagues the clarity to be accountable for their decisions based on many regulations we have to comply with in the pharmaceutical industry, but always have the bigger questions in mind. What is the intent? Why I'm inviting a healthcare professional to our conference? Why I'm sponsoring, for example, a patient organization? Why I'm engaging with a speaker in a speaker's program? These are the questions behind our policy we want to address. If you have the ethical framework and the policy in place, and again, that's a journey. It's not something what you do in a year. We also have to attack the risk management, because you can only formulate and implement good compliance regulation based on a holistic enterprise risk management. And what we did there at Novartis is we brought three buckets together. Holistic enterprise risk management based on workshops in all the countries, functions, and units we have at Novartis. Link them to a new policy and control center where there's a clear governance on policies and controls, but a holistic view. And followed up by monitoring and remediation systems that we can also follow up on the mitigation of risks. So I see many companies struggling with enterprise risk management because the functions doing this are working in silos, and the solution could be an integrated framework as we are trying it out at Novartis. And also to engage the management, we said we need a kind of North Star, something meaningful for them. So we came up with a Novartis risk compass where we say, let's discuss strategic risks, operational risks, emerging risks, and awareness topics. And we saw in the last 2 years that this system resonates extremely well with management and the way how they conduct the business. Closing before we go to the Q&A, a couple of words about third-party risk management. As I said, third-party risk is one of the biggest operational risks we all have in companies. We employ 10,000s of suppliers. And it's easy to say to get control over them. And you all know as super professionals, in real life, it's extremely difficult. Because it's not only control and due diligence, it's also monitoring and following up. And if you just imagine your own supply chain population, how difficult this is. And also suppliers have sub-suppliers and they have sub-suppliers. And the question is, how far is our responsibility as companies to be able to control, to oversee this system? So what we said, we want to have a holistic third-party risk management. We have all the risk functions now on one platform. One due diligence work stream and also one following up process. And the main statement here is, you see this in the middle, no risk assessment, no contract. That's very important. You have to be very strict on this. No risk assessment, no contract. And bring all the functions together to have a holistic view on the risk profile of your third parties. And now closing, and this is a call out for all of you what's coming in the future. As I said at the beginning, the classical anti-corruption compliance is simply expected from all of us. And there is no mercy if we fail in a systematic way. And we know how difficult already this part of the compliance system is. But the future is, and I bet to you in a couple of years, we have mandatory due diligence duties on human rights is the human rights part. And we know governments have their own responsibility for this. But we as companies, we need to contribute. We need due diligence on human rights in companies. We need to build stakeholder alliances to level the playing fields for human rights, and we have to engage on-sites in human rights assessments. And my call out for you is, on an ethics, risk, and compliance journey, don't forget the human rights. This is also the expectation of society, and we are part of society. Thank you very much. And now back to the moderator, to the polls, and hopefully many questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Klaus Moosmayer, on your insights and Novartis's new holistic approach to ethics, risk, and compliance. Now, Dr. Moosmayer, you have prepared 2 questions in the poll, so I hope our viewers have had a look at that. That's just to the right of the screen. And the first question is, do you believe ethics, risk management, and compliance belong together? So I'm curious to see what the viewers' answers are for that poll, and we'll take a look at that now. Do we have the answers for the poll, for the first poll? Okay, well, the second question you can start thinking about is, do you believe behavioral science is a relevant factor in developing a code of conduct? So back to the first question, do you believe ethics, risk management, and compliance belong together? It seems that the majority, I can't quite see what the number is there, over 50% say yes. So what are your comments to that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm very pleased to see this. I don't see the numbers, but if you say more than 50%, because I truly believe that's the future. I said this already several times. The compliance departments have to get out of the compliance anti-bribery corner in companies. If you want to get impact and make a difference, you need to get ethics, risk, and compliance together.
Okay, well, you'd be happy to know, actually 94% said yes, and only 3% said no. I'd be interested to hear why they said no, and 1% said don't know. Right, on to the next poll. Do you believe that behavioral science is a relevant factor in developing a new code of conduct? And I'll be interested to hear the answers on that, as we will also be hearing from Kristen Hunt after the break on behavioral science. So let's take a look at that. No for the answer to that, behavioral science. I think is that the actual poll we've got now? Yes, behavioral science. Okay, so no, it's not a relevant factor. Only 2% said no, and yes, 96% said actually behavioral science is very important.
These were maybe fishing questions, so maybe too many yes, but I just want to say a watch out. I mean, it's easy to agree, of course. I can tell you it's not easy to go on this journey, because there are a sort of prejudices and criticism about this. You go closer to the people, you talk about your own biases, you have to show what is difficult for managers on the leadership journey, your own vulnerability. And it was also for me a learning curve, because I was educated as a manager over years, being stronger, not show mistakes. And this is part of behavioral science, that we openly talk about our own biases and our own mistakes and vulnerability.
Okay, well, one question, Dr. Moosmayer, that is really burning on my lips is the very interesting sustainability-linked bond that Novartis has just launched in September with 1.85 billion euros. I mean, this is really leading in the pharmaceutical industry. Now, you say that's reinforcing ESG principles, but can you tell us a bit more about it? And also, how is it connected to compliance and ethics?
Yeah. So ESG is for companies not a question of choice. It's for 2 reasons a must. First of all, because intrinsically, as members of society, as family members, I have 3 kids, we need to be focused on environmental, social, and governance topics in all what we're doing. Second, for company, it's simply an investment issue. I mean, investors will not invest in you anymore if you don't score higher on ESG standards. And that's good. That's a positive development. The question may be how you measure this and who measures ESG standards. That's a different question and a difficult one. but we are fully believing in this. And we have set up in the company, to your question, where is compliance coming in? We have set up a trust and reputation committee, which drives our holistic ESG efforts, chaired by our CEO, Bas Narasimhan personally. I'm a member of this. We discussed the bond also in there. And the bond is linked to something which goes to the core of our company, patient access. Patient access in low and medium income countries. And this is for us important, and it's quite innovative, and we are glad that the market has taken this in a very positive way.
Connected to that, you say value before financial performance. Now that's a really tricky one for a business to uphold. What do your stakeholders say to that?
It's an interesting discussion. And if you talk to investors, of course, they want both. They want top ESG scores and top compliance scores, and they want high profits. And by the way, the pharmaceutical company is always criticized for high profits, but we invest 9 billion every year in research and development. 9 billion. We employ more than 25,000 scientists who are working every day on cancer, heart failure, and other severe diseases, also during COVID-19. So high profits for us are absolutely important for our industry. And we have to implement the ethics into the performance system. That's a very difficult and not finally solved issue. What we are doing at the moment, we are moving from an individual performance score to a team score to try to get to a new performance system where values and behaviors are rewarded for exceptional performers, but the main goal is to perform the team and not the individual anymore. And I believe this resonates quite well to the statement, values over performance.
Okay, getting into more detail with compliance, this is a question from some of our viewers. The question is, how do you balance raising awareness and interest of ethics and a potential overload of information and initiatives? And I mean, we see that worldwide with new regulatory documents and so forth. So how do you balance that?
Super question. Look, first of all, we employ many millennials in our company. And millennials, they don't want to learn by watching PowerPoint presentations. You need completely different communication channels in your training, in your awareness campaigns. And when we did the Code of Ethics campaign, we said, let's ask the associates what resonates with them. And they said, we want commitments, we want challenges. We used ethics challenges. So associates challenged each other with a commitment. And this went from country to country. It totally went out of our hands. We didn't want to control it. We couldn't control it. We had thousands of associates challenging them from the US to Japan to China to Nigeria to South Africa. And this created a momentum in the company. It's only a momentum. We have to make it sustainable. And I'm humble enough to recognize this. But you need these kind of new ways to communicate your message to get the people on board. Forget the classical trainings, forget the PowerPoints, which I showed today. That's old-fashioned. That's not the future for our associates.
Well, that would be very interesting. That fits in well with our topic after the break, communicating your compliance message, which we'll be taking a closer look at. Another question, which is a very detailed question, but seems to be burning in the minds of our viewers, is how challenging has it become to effectively manage third-party risks with COVID-19?
Yeah, first of all, it's a life-saving question for us and for our patients, because if we can't guarantee the supply for our manufacturing sites, for our medicines, our 800 million patients will suffer. And this was, of course, an absolute importance and priority to sustain the supply. And the solution for this was that we had already a good due diligence and monitoring system in place. And we involved the suppliers in our efforts. What do I mean with this? We developed an own COVID-19 guidance for our supplier, how they should treat their associates, how they should guarantee safety and health in their workplace. And then we gave this guidance for free away. And this guidance was published by us globally to all associates. Many hundred companies just copied it, took it for their own suppliers. And that's what I mean with collective action, working together to overcome the crisis. So do it together and then give it to the broader audience to make a difference and impact.
Dr. Klaus Moosmayer, thank you so much for your time and taking part in the European Compliance and Ethics Conference today. There are loads more questions from the viewers. I think we could have material here for at least another hour. We'd love to pick your brains, but I'm afraid your time is precious and our time is up. We need to move on with the agenda. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
All the best.
Have a great conference.
Thank you.
Stay well, stay healthy. All the best.
Thanks. Bye.